what time of the day it is because it's morning for me and it's later evening for so many of you. And what an honor and a privilege it is for me to be able to gather with you at all times. We call this Lion's Den not just because the name of the organization is Lion, which, of course, those of you who have been involved know it stands for Leadership in Obscurity Network. Most of us are not leaders that the whole world knows about. We're not some kind of big celebrity in our communities or in our nations. Some have positions of higher profile than others, but together we are leaders in obscure places, and that has been my calling for the last 15 years of my life to come alongside of people exactly like you for four reasons, basically. We call it the four E's. Encourage you to, if possible, equip you in some way based on the experiences or the knowledge that has been entrusted to me and that we can learn from one another, that we can empower one another to go out from the lion's den or wherever we are and accomplish what we feel is that calling and then remain engaged. If you study what I don't know if some of you are like National Geographic or you have looked at animals all over the world and studied what lions do, but the den of lions, which we have often referred to, the lion's den, is where the families of lions gather. It's perhaps most dominated not by the male species of the lion. It's more by the female species because it's a place to nurture the young as well as the old who are gathered in the lion's den. It's also a place where the younger ones and peers can be mentored. They can somehow, from the way we study lions as human beings, we know that they communicate, and they also must be strategizing when they're gathered in the lion's den to figure out how they're going to accomplish their next steps together. And so we think it's an appropriate thing to call this the lion's den, and thank you so much for being part of it. We do plan and have been doing this each month, what we call the Lion's Den Gathering, primarily the critical teams or team leaders in each country, or many of the countries represented by Lion. And yet we still intend to have a monthly opportunity for each of you as teams, not only to gather as teams, but perhaps with utilizing some of our resources. And Samson will be communicating over the next hours, but also next months, how we intend to make more materials, videos, printed materials, materials that you can use for yourselves as teams or as leaders. And that will all be downloadable, or we will have access to each one of you as teams primarily. So tonight, I'm so grateful that there are as many of you, but I thought we would begin a series that I expect to continue for at least 3 or 4 more Lion's Dens, called Developing the Leader Inside of You. Now, many of you have been leaders for a long time. We realize that, and we're honored to have you with us. Many of you perhaps know where that first theme of developing the leader inside of you, Dr. John Maxwell, a good friend and mentor for me, wrote this book way back in the 90s called Developing the Leader Within You. And if you do not have that resource, or if you would like to somehow acquire it, please make some effort to do it. It has been updated multiple times. It has also influenced me over many years as a leader as well. But the sessions of the Lion's Den are not based on that book. We're using that sense of how do we train, how do we grow, how do we nurture and mentor one another in the Lion's Den. Some of us are older. We have lots of hunting, teaching, leading experiences, and some of us are younger, and we would simply like to know what it will take to become an effective leader or a better leader. And I say a better leader because each person right now on this call, whether you think of yourself as a leader or not, whether you feel as if you're in a cultural position as a leader or not, but you are a leader. From the time you've been a child, you've been able to influence others. And that's the core, as we'll talk about, of what leadership is. So what I'm going to do is I prepared some notes for you to follow along with. If you have a pen or a pencil, please take notes if you like. We do intend to make the PDF summaries of these sessions available to you as downloads later on. I'm hoping to wrap up in time that we can have a little dialogue for those of you who have decent internet connections, and we can take a little bit of time for questions and answers, we hope. But Samson, I'm just going to share my screen here for a moment and go to the notes that I've prepared here for the Lion's Den called Developing the Leader Inside of You. Are you able to see this right now? Are all of you able to see this screen? I'm hoping.
Yes, we can.
All right, so
Yes.
great. So again, this will help just simply guide me quickly because I want to make certain that we don't, hopefully, as we say, bore you to death. But it is important that there's a little guidance. So developing the leader inside of you is, again, not based on this recommended book by John Maxwell. But if you don't have that book, please see if there's some way that you can acquire it or get some notes from it, and I'll be happy to help you put that. But we're talking about lions, leaders, is the leader that's already inside of you. And how
And
can you,
also, we can see your WhatsApp chat.
what's that?
Your
Oh,
WhatsApp
I
chat
see. That's up there on that screen. Ah, thank you for telling me. Excellent. Now, is it gone now?
is gone now. Thank you.
We're still getting the hang of doing this on Zoom here. So right now I'm wondering how can you train that leader, or that's what our topic is. And we have to begin by saying, what is leadership? Now, some of you already know this. I'm going to go through this. I will go through this fairly quickly, but it is important that we begin with the basics. According to John Maxwell, who coined that, one word answer to leadership is influence, and a leader, therefore, is someone who influences. But over the years, it has been helpful for me to develop a little broader definition. Some of you may know this from other sessions we've done, but the way I work with the concept of leadership right now, and as we're in the Lion's Den, here are some of the assumptions. You don't have to memorize this, but think through it as you can. Leadership begins with you as a leader have the ability to see that things aren't necessarily the way they should be. that life around you or issues around you or the organization that you're a part of, that there could be something better. So each leader begins with this, we might even call it a vision, the ability to see a better future. The present may be good or it may be terrible, but we can always sense it could be better. And that's what I call a preferred future. But now, as a leader, we need to develop the skill or have the skill to influence other people to also see that better future or that preferred future with us, and then work together to accomplish it. So for me, this is who I am as a leader. God gives each one of us the ability to see a better future and some skills to influence others to also see that future with us, but commit to work together alongside of us, to accomplish it. Now, some of you may wonder why I'm always wearing this beret, but it's a reminder to me each time I put it on every day that I have been called, much like one of my colleagues who was most influential to me, who was part of the military in the Air Force. He was a trainer, and wherever he went, whatever he did, people didn't necessarily know his name, but he always wore his training cap. And so for me, it is my reminder, and hopefully to you, that I have been called not only to have a vision for a better future, but to help you see that future, and let's work together to accomplish it. You know, everyone influences someone, and I don't really have to go through this, but it begins, we have grandchildren right now, and it just amazes me how even at 9 months or a year, those of you who have younger brothers or sisters or children, you know that from the time a child just learns how to make noise, a child can influence a parent by crying or by moving. And we do that with our peers. And, you know, celebrities influence fans, fans influence celebrities, pastors influence congregations, and vice versa, entrepreneurs and business leaders. And we often think that influence is always about position, but it's not. Influence is the mere fact that we are human beings and we have a unique way of communicating. We know that the animal kingdom has some of that as well, but the ability to communicate ideas and visions of the future and perspective, that belongs to this wonderful creature that God made called a human being. But now, where does that influence begin? I mentioned that the baby, you know, somehow a baby learns if I cry or cry louder, or if I cry with a certain type of emotion, my mom or my dad or that person around me is going to respond in some way. So it is a skill. It's not just an innate ability, but it is a skill that can be developed. Influence is a skill, and we can increase our influence and our leadership potential by learning more, growing more, equipping each other more, training more. So training can grow both our abilities and our skills. And that's why we're focused on developing both that ability and skill within us called leadership while we're here gathered in the lion's den. And I'm hoping over these months ahead that you'll continue to join us, because we'll have others. You know, lions learn from one another. It's not just because there is the big king lion who has all knowledge and spreads it out to all the lions, but it is a a den of lions that learn from one another, young and old. But it always begins with me. So if you ask the question, how can I become a person of influence? How can I develop my role as a leader? It starts with me. It doesn't start with someone out there giving me something or somehow providing me a position or paying me to do something, which is often the way we think about leadership. But rather, it begins inside of us. So how can you train? How can you develop that leader inside of you? And my question tonight is, where do I begin with that? And I compare it with my own growth in life. When I was younger, I wanted to be an athlete. I was an athlete to a degree, but I thought I was going to be this famous athlete, and I was really going to be a star player and all of that. And then there changed in my mind that I wanted to be one of these accomplished pianists. I was so influenced by some of these great performers. And so I had this idea, this vision of myself performing on the piano. And for a while, that's what drove me and my thinking. But let's just talk about each one of us. Each one of us has something in common, which is called a body. Now, I don't know if you like your body or its shape or its weight or how strong or how weak or how you look right now, but do you ever think about, or have you ever wished that you had a different looking body, or that your body was in better shape, or that somehow you could change your appearance? And so I would ask you, well, what kind of body do you want to develop? How strong would you like to be, or how fast would you like to run, and what body shape might you want? And for example, as I think about when I was younger, I wanted to grow up and have huge biceps and huge muscles and perhaps big thighs and, massive calves. I formed a picture in my mind of what I might want to look like. Perhaps you've done that. Simply stated, some of you you say, well, I should perhaps put on a little weight, or I should grow a few more muscles, or some might say, well, I've got to get rid of some weight, and I've got to get in better shape. But somehow we form a picture of our future body. It might look something like this, I don't know, or maybe like this, or like this. These are just to give you some kind of ideas or examples of how we think about developing a body. But then we have to ask ourselves, well, what's it going to take to get that body? Can you imagine what it takes for someone to develop a body that ultimately looks like this? I hardly even want to imagine what that takes. But if I look at myself and my own, may I say, physical condition, I often have to ask myself, what do I have to change? What do I have to change to get in better shape, to simply look better or feel better? It means there will have to be changes. And what do I have to eat, for example? Should I eat something different than what I'm currently eating? More health food, less junk food? And then I ask myself, what will it take to get that body besides just some changes in food? What kind of exercises might I have to do? What kind of training? And then I ask myself, do I need something I don't have, like equipment? If I'm going to do muscles or physical training, do I need all of this kind of thing to help me get there? And finally, I ask myself, can I do that by myself? Like just putting on my equipment of my running shoes and go out and run? Or do I need someone to help me? Might that become a more effective way of getting the body or getting into the shape that I want to be in. And now I'm comparing that with what it will take, what it does take for each one of us to grow our skills and our abilities as leaders. Where do we begin as leaders? We begin by asking the same questions that you might ask about changing your body or getting into shape or somehow becoming a little bit more proficient at some physical skill. Leadership is still an ability coupled with that skill that therefore means it can be developed. And so here are the questions. And these are the beginning. This is the basics. We will go on from here in future Lion's Den, but these are the questions as your senior leader, if I may say that each one of us must ask. And number one is, what kind of a leader is in me? What kind of a leader is in me? And that will determine what kind of a leader do I want to become? Because it begins with that vision, that ability to see it could be better. My leadership, that leader in me, which began the first time I was born, the first moment I was born, but what kind of a leader do I want to become with this unique creation that God has made called me? What will I look like? What will my leadership look like? What will I appear to be as a leader? What will I act like? And using those body ideas, what kind of shape will I look like? And what kind of speed or function? How capable? How strong? How much will I need a team to accomplish what it is that I hope to do? What position do I expect to play? And it means that we form a picture of our future leadership. Now, I know many of you are joining for the first time. Some of you have been part of Lion trainings in the past. I'm just so grateful that you are continuing to grow and wrestle and learn, and what I want to challenge each one of us to think about tonight is, how do we envision, how can we begin to see both ourselves and each other in the future if we continue to pursue our efforts together here in the Lion's Den? What might our future leadership look like? But then the next step, the next primary question is, what might we have to change in our lives? What must I have to change in my life to become a leader like that? I mentioned, food and change of environment and so on. But thinking about leadership, is it possible we have to think about changing the way we think? There are some habits that we've developed that we might also have to change if we're truly hoping to become that leader that we're envisioning. Maybe there are some ways we speak or don't speak. Maybe we must become a little more effective in our use of language, both within the arena that we hope to serve as leaders, or just simply day to day as we are trying to communicate with other people. And what knowledge might we have to acquire? What things might we have to learn? These are essential development questions for us to become the leaders in any field. If you are thinking about be, becoming a leader in education, or a leader in the business world, or a leader in ministry, or a leader in the medical profession, because we have all of these roles, arenas, skills, visions represented in the L.I.O.N network. And you know best what is the vision, what is the picture that is in your mind and in your heart that you feel most called by your Creator, if you are a person of faith, to become in the leadership arena. And so that question of what's the picture, secondly, what changes must I make, and then thirdly, what skills do I need to develop? I realize this may sound like kindergarten again, because we're back to the basics. But every time we gather in a lion's den, just like when we're together with multiple generations in our homes or in our families, it is important that we are constantly reminding each other of where and how it is we need to develop. So, what are the skills that you might need to develop to accomplish that future leader that you picture? Must you begin to think more about the future, or a better future, or defining what we might call a vision? That word is confusing in the English language, because sometimes we think of visions in a spiritual sense, that we get this vision somehow from the outside that's never been there before, or something from another arena or dimension is communicating to us. Or vision has to do with the physical way within which we can actually see things, and we must define how clearly we can see things. It's all of that when it comes to leadership. In fact, my friend Max Dupree, who was a CEO of a major multi-billion dollar US company, wrote the number one skill that a leader must develop is the ability to define reality around them. In other words, you can't see something better if you can't see what things are like today. You cannot see a preferred future if you cannot truly see what the present is like in your workplace, in your home, in yourself, in your mind, in your heart. So what are those skills that you might need to develop to move into that next arena? And vision, a clear perspective, is one of those. How about logical thinking? Is it possible that most of our thinking today, because of the influence of media and others around us, is not logical, but it's emotional? Is it possible that we are simply reactionary to things and people and events around us, rather than using that God-given capacity within us as human beings to think? That's what makes us so wonderfully created in the image of God, that we are able to somehow think beyond the present and about the future. And therefore, perhaps we need to develop some communication skills to communicate that thinking, and maybe just some core understanding, some core knowledge. So that is that third important question that we must each all ask if we want to develop as leaders. What specific skills must I need to develop? Not just what jobs are available, or what positions are available, or what leader role might make the most money or would make us feel most comfortable, but what are the skills that I need to develop and must commit to developing, so that I can accomplish that preferred future for my leadership role. And that includes asking, where am I weak? Do I have enough experience? What is my ability to influence others? What position do I currently have? What are the desires of my heart? And do I have any ability to start with just leading myself? I'm going a little faster here because there's so much so many questions that are involved in that. So we have to ask, am I weak? Am I strong? What kind of experience or abilities or positions or desires do I have? These are the questions I must ask. And then if those skills are essential to my future, what disciplines and exercise must I begin now? My thinking, my habits, my actions, my decisions, and what disciplines must I continue for the rest of my life if my new role in life is to be a leader? What is my view of the world? What is my understanding of myself? Am I truly committed to something bigger than me, or am I just really stuck in my own desires and sense of what I want to become? And so ultimately for me and for Lion and for us here in the Lion's Den tonight, that question boils down to this: do I truly care about others? Because yes, we begin with ourselves, but to develop as a leader, it will always, always, always mean we must be engaged with others in helping them to see that preferred future. So where do you begin with training the leader inside of you? We begin with me. And here's some additional questions to ask about you. And may I challenge you to prayerfully write these down. Again, if you don't have a chance to write them all down, we'll make them available to you. But ask yourself tonight this question: am I willing to serve others really? Or, if I'm honest with myself, my thinking about leadership is that others are going to serve me, that I will always be in charge, that I will be on top of the pyramid of people, and that everyone around me will be able to jump when I say jump, or they will be able to do what I ask them to do because I have this idea about leadership. My friends, it begins with serving others. We'll talk about servant leadership sometime in the future sessions, but particularly if you are people of faith. We know that we are called and defined by how well we serve others in terms of the success of our lives, not by our position, by our power, or by our authority, or by how much money we make. So ask yourself tonight, am I really willing to make the rest of my life all about serving others? And then secondly, is my leadership then really about me, or is it about we? I can't stress enough, my friends, how important these two questions are. I grew up in a family with 12 siblings, and from the time as the oldest son, I just assumed always that I was in the leadership position, and that therefore my younger siblings had to basically do what I told them to do, at least in my early years. And until both my parents and God changed my heart to realize that if I was truly going to lead, if I was truly going to influence my family and my siblings, I had to stop thinking about me and start thinking about them, because my responsibility was to serve them. And how could they become safer, more healthy, or accomplish what we needed to do as a family. So I've been growing at that for a long time. I haven't reached perfection. Too much of my own life right now is still about me rather than we. But that's why I'm sharing here in the den, my dear friends. These are essential questions that we need to ask ourselves in order to develop as leaders. And then the third question is, am I willing to act decisively even though I could be wrong? Am I willing, therefore, to take some risks because I'm the leader and people are expecting me to perhaps take the first step? And then the fourth question, is I willing, therefore, to ask more questions and do less talking? So many of the leaders that I know, and I'm feeling as if I'm setting a bad example right now, I would much prefer, as we're sitting in a relationship in the den, to be able to simply ask questions and hear from you so that we can process questions together. But so many leaders, all we want to do is just simply talk, tell, and expect others to listen. That's not leadership. That's not service. Often, we need to learn as a skill how to ask better questions and listen. And therefore, can we say more about the future every day than just about the past? Well, I did this, I did that. Listen to me because I'm so wonderful and I've done all these things. And that gets me down to this sixth question. Am I truly honest about what's motivating me as a leader? Again, is it all about what I want to accomplish, or is it all about how I can see a preferred future that we together can accomplish things greater than we've ever imagined before? So who wins when I lead well, and who loses when I lead poorly? And basically it comes down to this final question, my dear friends. Why do you want to be a leader? I could say, why do you want to be part of the L.I.O.N network? But I'm hoping and praying, and our assumption is, it's because deep down you want to become encouraged as a leader. You want to become better equipped as a leader. You want to be empowered as a leader. And therefore, it takes this engagement together. But keep asking that question to keep yourself honest. Why do I truly want to lead? So, my friends, do you see that leader inside of you? And do you understand just a little bit more how we can take some of these first steps to develop as a leader? Here's a quick summary of what we just said. Leadership is, this is again my definition, yes, it's influence, but it's the ability to see a preferred future with the skill to influence others to see that future with us and work together to accomplish it. And in order to develop that, we start by answering these questions. Write them out if you didn't write them down before, or download them after we have these sessions over. And please, between now and the next Lion's Den, for yourself, not for us, not to pass a test, but for yourself, answer these questions. What kind of a leader do you truly want to be? What's the picture in your head, in your heart, in your life about your role as a leader? Number two, to get to that point, what changes might you have to make in your life? Honestly, these are tough questions. And I want you to know that I'm still asking these questions of myself almost every day as I explore becoming a better leader. And number three, what skills and disciplines must I begin or must I continue? Now, I'm an older leader, as many of you know, There are so many new things in the world and in our lives today that never existed even in our imaginations when I was younger. So there are a lot of skills and disciplines. And with AI coming down the road, wow, we all have skills and disciplines that we should begin in order to accomplish, or at least begin learning about in order to accomplish true leadership. And perhaps this is the most essential, and it's why we're here in the Lion's Den tonight. Who should coach and guide me? And friends, that's why we have the Lion's Den. We truly want to be a place of encouraging, equipping, coaching, mentoring, nourishing, if that be. And many of you on this call right now can also be a part of doing that for each one of us. But that's my quick summary of developing what it takes to begin develop the leaders inside of you. And Samson, I'm going to turn it back to you. I'm sorry if I talk too long or too much, but when we're together in the Lion's Den, I'm hoping that we can honestly and openly share both our strengths, our weaknesses, and I'll say in summary, friends, as a leader, I have failed so often in so many ways, and that if I can just have the opportunity to help you avoid some of those pitfalls and not stumble on the things that I've stumbled on, perhaps I can encourage you and equip you to become better leaders than I am or was. So thanks for listening. Let's continue to commit to be part of the Lion's Den. Thanks.
All right, thank you so much, Dr. Jerry. That was a very powerful one. It was quite powerful and strong, reflective. I want to say thank you for that succinct and that quite elaborate session on leadership. I wouldn't want to take too much of our time. I just want to open the floor to questions. Um, yeah, I'm sure a lot has been said. Reverend has spoken about the picture, the vision to behold. Where do you want to be as the leader? What kind of leadership do you envision? He also spoke about the changes to make in order to become a better leader, to develop yourself. What are the changes to make? I mean, this has to do with personal examination now. What are the changes to make, especially with regards to your environment? He also spoke about what are the skills to develop. So I want us to ask questions tonight because I'm very sure that these things that has been said are quite powerful and very practical things, and I wouldn't want us to hold back with asking questions. So, is there anyone with a question? Just raise your hand, and then I'll allow you speak. I know we have quite a representation from Uganda. We have quite a representation from Gambia and Malawi. Um, you know, some of the government officials from Malawi has also texted me that they'll be part of the meeting. I know that some of them might be in tonight. So I expect questions. Okay, while we are still thinking, Dr. Jerry, I want to ask you. I mean, you spoke about skills to develop. What are there areas you would want to come along us, or people leaders in obscurity who probably don't have the opportunity to access some materials to help them develop? Talking about skills, we know that there's a lot of skill acquisition platforms or processes around, but there are some leaders who probably don't have the opportunities to access some of these skills. Do you have privileges that we can access? Do you have opportunities that we can leverage that you think you can help leaders in that category with to just help us assess these skills to better ourselves or some of these changes to make? Communication, for instance. How can we get access to materials? How can we have access to curriculums that we can use as a marker to track our development? Those kind of materials. Do you think it's something you can help us with?
Well, Samson, I believe that's what the Lion Network and what Lion's Den will be about. But I want to stress it doesn't take something out there for you to become a better leader. It takes something inside of you and an awareness of where you are right now. You have the capacity, if you have been given the desire, to grow as a leader. It doesn't take materials even. It takes a willingness to share and mentor and dialogue and ask these questions. So at the heart of what I want for all of you is that you can know and learn, what I've been able to learn over these many decades of life. But it's about shared life, and it's about engagement, and it's about mentoring and nurturing one another together than simply going through another curriculum or another list or another certification. So that's where I want to begin with that. And yes, to all of you who may have an interest in that question, Samson and I and others in the network, including our whole network of Indians who are asleep right now, we want to make some of these materials available through our online resourcing or the events or with your teams defining what is most needed for you as teams or what is most needed for you in your environment with our people involvement. Does it mean strategic planning? Does it mean a workshop? Does it mean walking together in some forms of partnership? These are questions, questions, questions we must continue to ask and then dialogue about them. Samson, I hope
Thank
that's
you.
not too confusing of
Yeah,
an
yeah.
answer. But
No, no, that's fine. I'm sure we've been able to pick a few things from there. I have another question here. I am Apostle Alice Ate from Kenya. How can one balance leadership in ministry, career, and family? So that talks about leadership integration. Now, let me put it that way: ministry, career, and family, such that no one suffers.
yeah,
And I
well,
want
I think,
a very sincere answer to that, sir, because it's quite sensitive.
yeah, I believe we will need some further sessions on there, but a couple of just beginnings. Number one, serve. It's not about you and how busy and the fact that you're serving others. Your first service comes with establishing priorities. The first people in your life that you've been called to serve are those closest to you, not your job, not those out there. But in ministry, we often think that because it's, quote, God's work, that somehow we can sacrifice our families in order that God's work may be done. God's work is through us. If He's given you a family, given you a marriage, a spouse, for example, that's your number one priority. Aside from your relationship with God, that becomes your number one priority. The balancing of priorities and the establishment of priorities throughout the course of a day. There are different times when we exercise those priorities. We can talk about that in future sessions, but it begins with a serving heart, a listening ear, remembering our priorities both as servants of the Lord as well as servants of our family. But nowhere can you find God saying in the scriptures, if you're in ministry, serve me first and then worry about your family. The way you serve me is by serving your family.
That's powerful, and a lot has been said in just that 2 minutes of answer. I hope we would have time to really look deeply into it because this is a major issue globally. I mean, we've heard of situations where families suffer because of service, because of leadership. I mean, I was reading a book just yesterday, and I saw how one of the God's generals lost his wife, talking about Jenny Lake, John G. Lake's first wife, how that she died because she was given to service. John G. Lake was doing the work of God, and I mean, he was just engrossed with it. She had no attention, and she was serving people and all of that. And when they were checking and examining her after death, they discovered that she died as a result of serving. All her strengths were gone and everything. So this is a very sensitive question, especially around family, ministry, and career. I hope we'll be able to. I mean, I'm really getting the interest of having this as our next lion. Then it will follow through because it's quite sensitive, and a lot of us are falling victim of some of these. I'm sure you also would have some practical examples to share with us that we can glean from. So thank you so much for that answer, sir. We have just 3 minutes to go. Do we have other questions? Because I know that okay, someone just read Gamma Aiwa Ondere. I don't know from what part of the world, but that name sounds the Gambia or something. She
I
said
have a
he or she
question,
said
Samson.
first ministry. He said what?
I have a question.
Okay, just hold on, Dr. Oscar. This person said your first ministry is family, and therefore it's paramount that you begin with it. And let's note that. So, Dr. Oscar, go on with your question, please.
Oh, thank you so very much, everyone who has stand up for this meeting, every ambassador, and people who are pursuing to have better leadership. My question is majorly one. Dr. Jerry, you told us about to ask one of the reflection questions asked us is, am I willing to serve others willingly? Then also, you define leadership as the ability to see the better future and helping others also see. So one of my question is, under that ability to help others, to evangelize others, the question is, how do you deal with leaders under you? Like some leaders, if you're dealing with some leaders under you and they are proud, how do you deal with such leaders? You want them to see, but then some of them are proud. That is one question. How do you deal with that? Then the other question is about am I willing to serve others willingly? And even the question said, which kind of leader do you want to be? How do you discover like your true leadership vision? Because I'm seeing this question running to that direction. How do you discover your true leadership vision, and how do you stay focused when people don't believe in your vision as a leader? How do you focus on that? And maybe you can help us with that. Thank you very much.
Well, Dr.
All right.
Oscar.
Sorry, Reverend Dr. Jerry. The first question, I want to be able to shape it. So the first question he asked bordered on character. So I'll put it this way. How do you deal with followers who are effective but not teachable? They are effective but character deficient.
Well, I think that's a different question than Dr. Oscar asked. And just in those three or four questions, there are many books that could be written. I will go back to the basics, and these are not profound answers. But leadership, first of all, is not a position. It is a role. Leadership can happen from any position within society, not just because there is a positional leader up here and we're down here and therefore we're just a follower, we have nothing to say. In one of these future sessions, we'll talk about leading can happen 360 degrees. But all leadership begins with recognizing that the present is not as good as it should be. And then how do we serve others? How do we help others to see a preferred future, not because it's our vision, but because it is a preferred future. It is a better potential reality for all. And that's why we must learn these communication skills, which includes a sensitivity to where someone is in their position, or more importantly, how someone is thinking about their position. When you are serving a proud leader who cannot see anything but his positional area of influence. That's a different technique than serving someone who is eager to learn and follow you, and yet they have no capacity because they are incompetent. We can talk in future sessions about dealing with incompetent leaders who are in positions of authority. But I will guarantee you that ultimately it boils down to serving those leaders in a way that we're making up for what they can't see by helping them to see it in love and with community. So there are many techniques, but the basics of what we just outlined here become the foundation upon which all of those future, may I say, problems and challenges can be resolved.
Some of these questions will be answers to some of these questions will be the opening to our next Lion Den so that they can be addressed. Our time is up, but just before we go, I can see someone's hand, and I just want him to ask his question, but answers will be provided in the DMs and also as an opening to our next Lion Den next month. So I'm just trying to get that, and I think that's Sumwi Jukwe David. Was it you who raised up your hand, yeah?
Yes, please.
Okay, please just go on with your question. I'll take note of it. We'll provide answer via DM and then respond to it next month.
Okay. Thank you so much, Samson. Thank you so much, Dr. Jerry. My question is, when you're a leader, sometimes you might be a leader, and the people you're leading, they feel you're hurting them. Or sometimes during that leadership time, you hurt yourself. Is there any formula to follow? Not hurt others and not hurt yourself.
I'm not, did I hear, did you say you were hurting others? Is that what you're saying?
Yeah, sure.
Well, I mentioned that a leader's position, a leader's role, first of all, is to define reality. And if you are hurting someone with your leadership, then the reality is not preferred. It is, you must honestly assess as a leader whether or not you are actually, as a leader, creating harm rather than serving someone's good. On the other hand, just simply because someone has hurt feelings or has different expectations about your leadership or has been raised with a completely different concept of their role versus your role, these are all part of those communications issues that we can deal with and will in the future. But again, it begins with, are you truly serving that person if you're hurting them? If the reality is you're hurting them, of course you're not serving them. On the other hand, as a coach, when I'm training leaders, let's use a physical example. If I'm training an athlete, if I'm training someone to run 5K along with me each morning, they are going to feel uncomfortable and hurt for many days in order to go through the disciplines that we must take them through in love and with the proper motivation and support in order for them to get there. It's like parenting. You know, sometimes a child feels very strongly that all you have done is abuse them when you've told them no. So forgive me, I'm just throwing out illustrations here, but it comes back to defining what is the reality of the situation. Reality is not seen through the feelings of others, although we must be aware of where those feelings come from. But the reality begins with not only the movement toward the preferred future, which includes the betterment of all of our people, and our heart for serving them, not abusing them. I guess that's the quickest I can answer that.
Yeah,
All
thank you
right.
so
Thank
much.
you, everyone. Thank you, Dr. Jerry. Thank you for tonight. Thank you for the session. Thank you, everyone, for joining. This meeting was supposed to finish 6 minutes ago. Medina, you can send your question to me via
Yes, please.
WhatsApp or email. I'm going to make sure we get answers to them and send you the answer. And then we're going to provide an opening answer in our next Lions Den meeting. I want to take responsibility and I want to account for the time. And that's the reason why we're going to be putting this meeting to an end now. And I apologize for taking another 6 minutes of us tonight. It was against our promise, and I sincerely apologize for that. I want to say thank you to everyone for joining. Our DMs are open, the emails are opened, and I want to believe that it has been an impactful and value-adding 1 hour, 7 minutes to everyone. Thank you so much. See you in our DMs, see you in our team meetings, and then see you in Lions Den next month. Thank
God
you.
bless.
Bye-bye, everyone.
God bless.
Bye.